Get it all together with the makeup, right? Okay. Am I live, Tony?
Yes, you is. You're live on the air. Welcome to Dr.
Hey,
Judy
all right.
WTF.
Thank you so much. And welcome everybody. Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud. And with me, we have Christiana Davisson, therapist, one of my wonderful members of my staff at the Psychological Healing Center, a real expert in mind mapping, and also specifically on narcissism, which seems to be epidemic these days on whatever level. You know, there are the mild narcissistic traits, and then there are people who are just full-blown narcissists and demean, devalue, destroy, and discard, which we'll get into, and vampire your energy, which we'll get into. And why don't you introduce today's topic, Christiana?
Yes, thank you for having me back on, Dr. Judy.
You're welcome.
And it's, I feel very privileged to be part of your team and to
Thank
use
you.
the mind map to work with clients. Because what people need when they're coming out of these abusive relationships, whether it's been in adulthood or in childhood, is a plan. And because sometimes you can leave the relationship, or you can be looking back at your childhood wounds and you're like, okay, well, what do I do with this? How do I get from this, to healing? And how do I really feel like I'm doing a thorough job?
Yes.
And that's what the mind map does offer. Um, yeah.
Yes, thank you, because we need a plan. We can't just be meandering through. Most of you know that I'm not a fan of talk therapy in a redundant, sort of repetitive, what the Freud way, where it just goes on and on and on. And how does this make you feel? And how does that make you feel? Which is all very nice. It's just that I feel that you should get out of therapy and counseling
At last, yes.
and with a lot of education and a lot of skills to know who done it to you, to create the template or blueprint, as I like to call it, to set you up for these narcissistically abusive relationships that then lead into our topic, which is toxic
Yes.
love versus healthy love, which is what we're going to delve into. Why would you even sign up for toxic love? And maybe you don't even know that you are. And so there's a cause behind that. And furthermore, in order to get somewhere with therapy, you have to know, okay, who done it? How did you react to it? What did you encode in there that now trips you up and takes you on a long ride into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns? So we've got to track.
Exactly.
So as many of you know, I want to announce it because I'm so excited. There's so many cool things happening here at the Psychological Healing Center. The first one that is the happening is Christiana Davisson will be leading a webinar September 3, 10, and 17. And it's going to be intensive. It's going to take you through the entire mind map process, and it comes with a book, and then the 9-panel mind map video series, and your Healing from Narcissistic Abuse journal. The webinar is titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, and it will be in depth, and we're going to address a lot of things like how to foolproof yourself from ever signing up in a narcissistic relationship, and many other things will be accomplished through your participation in this. And so tonight I want to offer everyone who is going to pre-register, and this is for the audience listening. So the webinar, as you can see, is $19.95. If you pre-register, it's $1,500, which is a lot less expensive than signing up for therapy with any one of the team members. It's just a really big therapeutic savings, and it'll be small enough so that you can interact and ask your questions and write in your journal and go through your process. So if you sign up now, meaning in the next week, you get one free session with Christiana. I'm throwing that in as a bonus to everyone listening. So please grab the opportunity, and you will not be sorry, because this is really a deep dive into your psyche, and it's wrapping around our topic tonight, which is toxic love versus healthy love, and why it is so important to understand your blueprint, and why it is so important to understand what the Freud you're repeating because of your blueprint, and why you're in the hot mess that you're in. So let's start with that, and then we'll take some call-ins. So let's talk about cause. Okay, so we've got panel one, the cause. What is the main wound of narcissism? Apathy. Just don't care. Parents just don't care. They don't care enough. Maybe one of them is absent physically, psychologically. They just don't really bond with their child properly.
Absolutely, Dr. Judy. It's you know, if we think about it, a narcissistic parent, they have no self. You know, there's an emptiness inside them, so they get their self from looking out there. They get supply, and that's where they get their self-love from, is the attention and the supply and all of that. Now, when they have a child, a narcissistic parent, you know, before that child's even born, this is my thinking, they have an image of that child. It's not the true personality of the child. It's an image that the narcissist creates of that child as they need them to be, to meet their needs. And then when the child is, you know, growing up, the child learns to try to meet that image that the narcissistic parent projects onto them or nurtures in them. And the child then learns that in order to be loved, in order to receive love, I have to abandon myself and try to be what the other person wants me to be. And
and this is where the system begins to flip, because the correct system, the healthy system gone right, as I like to call it, is a system where the child is honored for the emergent self. The child is number one. It's not the parent's agenda. It's what the parent is supporting will be the true, authentic expression of who the child is.
Exactly. And, you know, I hear often from clients, you know, that say a narcissistic mother, for example, she might say something along the lines of, you know, oh, you know, before I had you, or, you know, when I was pregnant with you, you know, I already knew that you were going to be this and this, or you know, I already knew that you were destined for this particular calling in life, or I just knew that, you know, when you were born, it was my first experience of real love, and it's a love that was really, I've been looking for all my life. So things like this, where the parent is sort of showing that the child is there to meet their needs for love, rather than it being something mutual.
So in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which you are all welcome to a free download of, or you can buy it off of Amazon.com for a hard copy. I talk about this mother-infant disconnect, and in the form that you're talking about, the mother is projecting her wishes, needs, and dreams upon the child. And where does this come from? Possibly because the mother didn't get her wishes and needs fulfilled, and now the child is an opportunity for her to be an extension of what didn't occur for mom. And now we can go through the child, through to, you know, from the mother to the child, through the fulfillment of mother's wishes, which is a really bad deal for the child. But what I was going to mention about my book is the case study really is about that. So it's about a daughter and a mother disconnect. based on the mother wanting the child to fulfill her dreams and wishes, and what that did, what deleterious effects it had on the daughter's psyche. And so, you know, when we're talking about all this mind mapping and all this cost business, we're really talking about why is it that you are sitting here watching the show, and what deleterious effects it had on your psyche in terms of depression, anxiety, body symptoms, mind-body connections like backaches, headaches, stomach aches, and worse, disease. So this is not something that just is a light conversation. This goes very, very deep. And so people show up with all kinds of symptoms and, of course, defense mechanisms. And it's the job of the mind map therapist to undo all this damage so that you can shift out of this mess and then be connected back to the expression of your authentic self and live a better part 2 of your life.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think what happens in that, you know, that panel 1, 2, and 3, really, we discover there where we began to believe that we were unlovable, and where we began to not love ourselves, and then try to do things to get love in an unhealthy way because of this belief, this underlying belief that just as we are, we're not enough.
We're not enough. And we've done shows, in particular, the one that I'm thinking of is the show that we did on when the safe place is the toxic bond, right?
Yes, the trauma bond, wasn't it?
The trauma bond, and your safe place is a trauma bond. And that's exactly what we're talking about now. So are you really loved? Well, if you call love filling an agenda and a hole in the soul of a mother, well, okay, is that love? Obviously not, right? No. And so what happens?
That's abuse, isn't it?
It's abuse. And so there is the template for the establishment of being vulnerable to narcissistic abuse, because now you have been groomed to be a people pleaser. You've been groomed to fulfill on other people's agendas. And now anybody that needs that kind of a control and manipulation and narcissistic supply is going to hook into you and do things like mirror you and give you intermittent reinforcement. I call them molecules of love, and train you to exist on very, very low dosages of love. Low doses of love, and then there we have it. So we've got the transference of the blueprint into the copycat life of who you will select into your life.
Yes, absolutely. And really, you know, what happens when we are, you know, in childhood, when we are exposed to this unhealthy love, but which is really masquerading as abuse. It's masquerading as love, but it's actually abuse. To be honest, you're being used. We then associate being used with being lovable. We associate that, you know, oh, when I'm being abused, I'm actually wanted by this person. Right. I'm useful to them, and therefore I'm lovable. And to think of then letting go of that, of people pleasing, of rescuing, of, you know, trying to be everything for them, is almost like, well, if we do that, we're going to be left on our own and abandoned. But really, what we're letting go of there is letting go of abuse, so that we will have the opportunity then to encounter what it means to be truly loved.
So we're getting into this people-pleasing kind of behavior with which narcissists really eat up, because what could be better than a person who will cater to the narcissistic needs? Isn't that a wonderful e-ticket ride for the narcissist? And then isn't it sad and vampiring the person that will give, give, give. And then, of course, the hole in the soul of the narcissist is never filled. And also the hole in the soul of the giver is never filled because they're trying to fill their hole by being goody, goody, goody and givey, givey, givey.
Yes.
And the other one is the opposite side of the coin. They're taking, 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 and just draining the other person out. So it's almost like a match made in hell, if you will. And so we're intercepting this. So it's very important for those of you listening to understand that the mind map is designed to intercept and break this psychological repetitive pattern. So not only can you heal from it, but you won't pass it on to your next generation.
And the thing is, you know, when you have been in a narcissistic relationship, either in childhood or in adulthood, but particularly in childhood, you know, you learn to be wary of love, you know, because you're aware that there's manipulation going on. You're given, you know, you're given a bit of love here, but it's not unconditional. Usually, it's usually about sort of getting you to do something, or it's a reward for having done something that's pleasing. So when you are pleasing to the narcissist, when you're pleasing to somebody else, that makes you lovable, and that's what makes you a people pleaser. You know, because that's the addiction then, is to pleasing people. I've got to make people pleased with me, because then I'm okay, then I'm lovable. If I make them displeased and they're not pleased with me, then I face rejection and abandonment, and I've got to avoid those at all costs, because it means I'm unlovable.
So, Christiana, you have seen so many people, both males and females, males, females who have narcissistic mothers, narcissistic fathers, or both. And so let's just talk about what you see physically in them. You're looking at this person, they come into the room, and what do they look like after they've been through this whole draining process? What do you see on in their body language?
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Judy. You know, there's just there can almost be a numbness sometimes. It's just there's a lack of energy, there's a lack of sense of purpose in life. Yes. There's a sense of being drained, and a bit despairing, you know, because all your efforts to try to make yourself lovable are not good enough.
Just reminding me of these pictures that I see of heroin addicts, and you see a timeline, and that's why I asked the question, because I actually can physically see a timeline on the person's face. So if you look at a person before the addiction, let's say heroin, and then you look at them a month later and they're looking worse and hollow, and then 3 months later and their eyes are looking empty, and their skin is changing, and the whole facial expression is changing, and then you look at this timeline, and then usually the article or the video will say, okay, so here's what I looked like 6 months into my addiction, and then I recovered, and this is what I look like today. And you see a completely refreshed person. So that's the paradigm shift. That's what we're aiming for, rebooting you, okay? Because when you're in it, remember, this is a from, through, to model. What you encoded in yourself through decoding all of the damage to recoding you into health. So during the encoding process, you're draining out. During the decoding process, you're detoxing. And during the decoding process, you're shifting into nourishing yourself.
Yes, replenishing, aren't you? It's almost you kind of you do go from seeing how a lack of self-love entered in for you, yes, actually, and then you move through to seeing, actually, those were all projections. There was no need for me to have a lack of self-love. You move through to sort of reclaiming your original dignity, that you're meant to be here, you're here for a reason, and that you are innately lovable. You don't need to make yourself lovable. In fact, your way of being truly loved is to begin this journey within, to discovering love within you first.
But here's the problem in these narcissistic dynamics: you're not mirrored for who you're becoming. And there's no real incentive to draw out your authentic self, because they don't want your authentic self. It doesn't suit.
What use is that?
Yeah, what use is your authentic self, right?
Boring. Yes.
Right. Imagine Cinderella and the ugly stepmother, right? Saying, well, Cinderella, I'm gonna, I've changed now. I've been mind mapped, and I'm gonna go and support your authentic self. I mean, no. But then Cinderella will say, oh, thank you, dear mom. And she says, so I could stop sweeping the floor and doing the dishes and cooking for those ugly stepsisters and so on. And then the mother goes, wait a minute, I don't think I like that deal. Let's go back to
I didn't say that.
Let's go back to the old deal. Okay.
Yes.
So you could see that there's no incentive for the mother or the narcissist in your life currently to encourage any such thing, because in their mind, it takes away from what they need and what they want.
Yes. And their image of you, that's their control over you. They can't see you for who you really are, because it just doesn't compute to them. It's you are an extension of them. And for you to have your own independence is almost like a personal attack. It's kind of, it's almost like you saying, I don't love you.
That's right. Because don't forget, they're injured. Okay. So their blueprint is also warped, and their idea of love is to be served, for example. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about the narcissistic wall, because that's a very, very important concept that you will get into in the webinar. What is narcissism? Is the system gone wrong, where the mother flips the system, where the primary caregiver flips the system and makes themselves number one over the child? So what happens is that instead of, in the case where people develop this dis-ease or the traits of narcissism, or the full-blown traits of narcissism, is that they become a human doing rather than a human being. And after a while, from all of the human disconnect, they build a wall around themselves, and sometimes they cut their heart out and become apathetic, just like their parents. And this is the wall of apathy that's very, very hard to crack, because behind the facade is a lot of pain or arrested development or both. And it's really, really hard to get in there, because they've spent so much time really reinforcing this wall so that they can become immune to human disconnect.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a misconception out there that, narcissistic types are, they love themselves so much that, they just don't care about anybody else, and they're so self-centered and that sort of thing. But actually, it's not that. They are filled with hatred for their authentic selves. There's no self-love. They cannot love themselves. They hate themselves, and that's why they have to disconnect from that and put on this external lovable self.
So panel number 5 for a minute is a metaphor for the isms, and there you see the isms, and let's just pick one of those isms to represent narcissism. And let's take maybe the tight blue ball, because it looks kind of impenetrable to me. It's the most shut down looking one, so that's why I picked it. So the narcissistic wall, as you mentioned, Christiana, behind the wall is a lot of toxic shame, a lot of low self-esteem, horrible core beliefs about themselves that you would never know. And in defense of it, in defense of this narcissistic injury, is a huffing and a puffing and an appearance that they're better than. So that's the false self. So in there is a lot of pain that they're probably not even all that aware of until you touch it and puncture their narcissism, and then you'll get the rage. Okay, so they don't sit there necessarily in pain. They're more reactionary to being punctured by truth. Truth is a big narcissistic puncturer.
Yes, it's the enemy.
The enemy. It's like in my book, I talk about the Wicked Witch and Dorothy spilling water in her face, and then she says, I'm melting, I'm melting. Yes. So the narcissist is the truth.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, that's the difficulty when you're trying to be in relationship with a narcissist, whether it's in childhood or adulthood. You're trying to connect with somebody who's actually presenting a false self to you. So you're trying to connect with a falseness. So you can't get deep. You can't get that deep exchange of love. You know, and that's why so many of my clients come to me and they have this deep yearning still, you know, and it's so hard to sit with that yearning, that hole in the soul, as you talk about, you know.
Well, there's
that lost opportunity to deeply connect with your primary caregiver, and that goes deep. That really does go deep.
I think you're on it, Christiana. That is the main pain, because we're wired to connect, and more than anything, we want to connect to our mothers, our primary caregivers, and if they're not emotionally available, we're really setting ourselves up for pining for the rest of our lives.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we repeat it by choosing another person who's incapable, and then we pine some more, and we do the the Freud, because we chase the herder that will never be the healer, which is one of my videos that I want everybody to watch. The herder cannot be the healer. And then there's another one called The Herder Cannot Be the Healer Unless, and the unless, of course, is unless you go through the mind map process.
Yes. Okay. I love it.
Okay, so I'm hoping that everybody is connecting the dots here, because this big setup is this toxic bond between mother and infant, setting you up for toxic bonds with lovers, husbands, wives, bosses, best friends, sociopaths who, psychopaths who, or anybody who could take advantage of you, because your walls are not tough. You're good bait for one of these cluster B personality disorder type people. Your walls,
the opportunities are endless. Yes.
Right, your walls are permeable. And so let's go to the mind map for a minute, because I want to show you physically the difference between toxic love and healthy love. So if you look at panel number 3, you will see there's a bond, and I'm going to use it metaphorically as a bad bond between the mother and the baby. It's a toxic bond. You can see the haze in the background, and that bond leads to chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. Okay, there's no other outcome for that. So most people live in panels 1, 2, 3, and then the Freud of 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the purpose of the webinar and the mind map system is to shift you out of panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and move into a healthy bond, which consists of panel 7, where you could see that The blue plus the yellow bubble creates light, okay? And that is synergy. And that is where both people can give and take. There is a 1 + 1 is greater than 2 phenomenon, meaning that they're sharing and caring and synergy. The other side of that coin of panel 7 would be if the light in the middle were the light was sucked out and there was darkness, meaning the vampiring effect. 1 + 1 is less than 2, or even less than the one that you are. And you'll know it because you're being sucked dry. So this is physically an illustration of healthy love, which is the 1 + 1 is greater than 2 phenomenon, and the toxic love, which is starting with the wounds of childhood, your reactions, and then this horrible toxic tie to mother, primary caregiver, and then the outcome of that. So I want to go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, it's not, you know, it's not about always blaming the narcissist and, you know, oh, they've done this, and we don't want to stay there, you know, because really, if we want to heal from this, what it means is that we are the ones that have to change. That's what this whole thing is about. It's about having the courage to say, okay, I need to go within now, because I'm showing up in relationships in a particular way that is unhealthy and is opening me to toxic love. And the way to remedy that is to really see how the narcissist in my life is actually showing to me, is actually mirroring to me my low self-esteem, my image of myself, if I'm staying in this relationship. So in that sense, the whole purpose of this is to really change your self-image, is to really see clearly the old self-image, and then to begin to say, no, that is not me. That is not the authentic me. The authentic me now is, you know, confident, and really beginning to step into those with courage.
So here's the greatest advantage of having been through narcissistic abuse, okay? And here it is. Narcissistically abusive relationship will absolutely reveal your injuries of childhood like no other, okay? Yes. It'll literally bring to the surface all your abandonment issues and all your fears of not being good enough and unlovable, and all your fears like no other will come to the surface. And that's grist for the therapeutic mill, if you will, okay? That all rhymes, doesn't it? I just thought of that.
Okay.
So we're going to use it. We're going to use, instead of looking at it as poor you, you've gone through it, and yes, poor you, you've gone through it.
Yes.
Let's use it therapeutically to see what is living within you that's so wounded that you took this ride into hell with the narcissist, and then got trapped into what I call the double dungeon of darkness and escaped from. So this is where we're going to concentrate our energy. This is where Christiana is going to skillfully use the mind map to get you out of this double dungeon of darkness. And then the other thing that I wanted to add to that is that when you really see and paradigm shift your eyes into truth, you're going to change your taste. They're not going to look so yummy anymore. Okay?
No.
We shall take the appeal out of the narcissist. We will peel off their outer shell.
We'll take off the wrapping.
Yeah, speaking of peeling, we're going to peel off the outer shell so that you could see them for who they really are. Immature, manipulative, toxic people who need to steal your soul and need to steal everything from you because they're empty. There's an emptiness there. And the sad
Yes.
thing is they don't win either, because they may suck you dry, but guess what? They're not growing because they have a hole in the soul. So
Yes.
anything that you pour in there will just leak out. So they keep pouring more and more and more in there.
Mm.
If you're not enough, then they'll supplement with other people.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Affairs and gambling, and maybe not even only people, gambling, workaholism, and being on the cell phone and gaming and porn and all of that, because that hole in the soul just doesn't hold anything.
It's you know, it's interesting what you're saying there, Dr. Judy. You know, when you're in relationship with somebody like that, you know, the desire when you love somebody is that, you know, even though you may have times where you annoy each other, or, you know, you have an argument or something like that, a healthy relationship, a healthy love is really about being able to repair those times, you know, being able to come together and sit down and listen and, you know, really understand, empathize with the other person, and okay, meet a healthy compromise or whatever it is to repair the relationship.
Right.
But when you're in relationship when it's a toxic relationship, you're not allowed to. They don't want that. It's not about hearing you. It's about you hearing them and you apologizing.
And you apologize.
End of.
Right. End of story. You apologizing. Anything you did is going to be held against you. Good, bad, anything.
Yes.
I want to just open this up for questions. This is a call-in show, everybody. So please call in and ask away. And as we're waiting for calls, because we love calls, I want to remind everyone that the webinar is starting soon. The fee for the webinar is $1,995. Sign up now, and it's $1,500. You'll save yourself $495. And then if you sign up after hearing this show, you get a free session with Christiana. So I'm hoping that you're going to see this as a very, very big savings, a therapeutic savings, because you're going to get 12 hours of therapy time with Christiana. The group will be small, so you'll have plenty of individual attention. And of course, you'll have the book, the journal to work with, and you'll have the 9-panel mind map video series to work with. And this is very exciting because Christiana, like no other, knows the pathway out of this hellhole that you're living in, which is why you're even watching a show like this. I mean, who's going to spend their Thursday evening watching toxic love versus healthy love and narcissism and so on, unless you've been really injured? Okay, so, right?
I'm just thinking actually of a client recently that said to me, you know, we were talking about love actually, and she said to me, she just said to me, well, what's love got to do with it? And
famous line from a famous song from a lovely teen.
That's right.
Just passed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, what's love got to do with it? I wonder if that speaks to some of her story as well. Tina Turner, even, but you know, I was taken aback by that. You know, that she was talking about her childhood and her relationship with her mother, and she said, you know, well, what's love got to do with it?
Well, it's like Vegas, you know, you think you're winning, but you forget that you spent $1,000 to get $100 back, or $10 back, or $5 back. Forget, because intermittent reinforcement, which means partial reinforcement, is the most powerful schedule of reinforcement. According to behavioral scientists, if you put rats in the cage and you give them intermittent reinforcement, you'll have them pressing away forever. If you give them constant reinforcement, they'll get bored. And if you put them on extinction, they'll stop pressing the bar. But if one little pellet falls out of that little container after you put them on extinction, they will go crazy trying to get more out of it. And this is what I mean by the system. Okay, so if a narcissist is giving you one molecule of love every now and then, it feels so good because you're so low on dopamine. You're so low on the love drug, right? So you want it. You're pining for it.
Yes, but it can also, it can also be sort of quite confusing in childhood if you have a narcissistic parent, because, on one hand, they might be sort of caring for your basic needs, or they might be saying, oh, yes, I love you, or I love you so much. But then on the other hand, they're not spending time with you. They're not, they might be, having anger attacks and things like that, and the child can be left thinking, well, mummy's saying this, and she gets my clothes ready, but I don't feel love. I don't feel the love, and that's, it can be very confusing.
So that's the gaslighting. I love you. I love you. You're such a good little boy or girl, but I don't have time for you now. Go away. And if you don't do what mommy says, then I'm sorry, but I'm gonna ignore you. You're not good enough. So that's the beginnings of the gaslighting part. And
yes, or it can be, sometimes these types of parents can put on a show of pretend love in public. So, suddenly the parents kind of saying, oh, yes, my son, putting his arm around him, or the mother kind of, oh, she's amazing, all the rest of it. Well, behind the scenes at home, the child's being criticized and demeaned, devalued, shamed, and in that sense, it's kind of like, gosh, children learn that love is, they have to pretend.
Here's the nasty part about what you're saying, is that it's like a silent injury, because on the surface of it again, it's the false self.
Yes.
There's the false self. Oh, my children are wonderful, and I'm displaying what a wonderful mother I am. So nobody sees it, and then there are no enlightened witnesses to what's behind the scene. So everybody will then make the child crazier by saying, oh, come on, you're crazy. Of course your mother loves you. What are you talking about? She talks about how cute you look in the clothes she bought you, or she talks about how great your ballet recital went, or how wonderful you are on the baseball court, okay? Right, on the baseball field, I should say.
Yes.
So it's really, really, really confusing, because when you don't have an enlightened witness who stands there to say, you're not crazy, you're being made crazy, and something's not lining up here, and you should know that it's not lining up. And so that person's missing because they don't see what's happening behind closed doors. And until you come to therapy and you have somebody like Christiana become your enlightened witness to show you, wow, sure looks good on the surface. We don't see any cuts. We don't see any burns. We don't see any evidence of those other childhood wounds, like physical abuse or necessarily blatant verbal abuse. Okay, it's more silent. It's a silent one. And
that's the worst one.
The worst one, right? It's the quiet wound. It's the wound of apathy, and that's what we're going to concentrate on in the webinar. So remember, the webinar is coming up September 3rd, 10th, and 17th, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 1 p.m. So block off those hours for yourself. And in 3 weekends, you will find that you will go through a very intense process to get you out of this dark hole that you've fallen into, unfortunately, through no fault of your own, and shift out of this and start to grow again. And if you sign up now, you get a free session with Christiana, and I'm going to tell you which session you should use your free ticket on. Okay, are you ready? So when you get to panel number 6, you're going to do a process called Because of You, Mom or Dad. It's a truth dialogue. And I think that you should use your free ticket on that session so that you can have an enlightened witness to speak the truth to. And Christiana is great at really listening and getting out of you the toxic poisons that you've stored within you. Now, don't be calling your parents, okay? Maybe they're not even here to call, but don't, if they are alive, don't call your parents and say you've been rotten parents and this is what I discovered in my mind map process, because I'm reminding you they will be punctured with truth. They'll go into rage or they'll shut down, and it will be a re-injury to the self. So the better place to do it is in the course of your treatment. The best place to do it is with a trained specialist in the mind map system. And I would use my free session on panel number 6. And of course, you can add more individual sessions to your process. And the webinar is going to be a full mind map process. Again, from the wounds of childhood, their reactions and encoding, through dismantling, decoding the chaos, defenses, and breakdowns, and then shifting into health. So are there any callers? Do you have any questions out there? Please do call in.
Actually, there's no calls, but there are some comments that I wanted to see if you could address. That one of our amazing listeners said in the chat room, there is no such thing as love. It's all fake. And then somebody did reply, there is love for those who learn to love and respect themselves. Could you address people that had narcissistic parents and they really feel that there's no such thing as love? How do they start to heal?
Well, I want to say one thing and then pick it up from there, Christiana. Parents set the bar. So if there's no such thing in the world of the mother infant as love, then in their world, in your world, there's no such thing. Why should a stranger love you more than your own mother or father or primary caregiver? Why? There's no such thing. So this is the world. The world is as the mother infant creates it to be. And it's final because the blueprint is finalized. Remember, but it's not final according to what we're seeing, because we can unravel the damage and we can unravel this finality of a philosophy that love doesn't exist. You're right. Whoever asked the question, you're right. It doesn't exist in your family of origin. Absolutely, it doesn't exist. I believe it. However, is that an absolute truth? Absolutely not. And that's what we're here to show you, is that there is a panel 7, 8, 9. So you've been living in panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And love doesn't exist in panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is no synergy. Okay. You've never been shown synergy. So how do you know that something exists if you never tasted it, smelled it, touched it, felt it? You don't know. So we're here to open that space up for you so that you can experience a paradigm shift, a new way of seeing, a new way of being, or at least an opening so that you can have a new experience with somebody that is nourishing to you, that can actually feed you and help you to take in that nourishment. Because part of the problem is that people who've been injured by narcissists, they also start to shut their heart down. Okay. And then they don't take in the love. And so they have a problem with receiving. So part of the process is learning how to receive love as well.
Yes, very good point. Yes, I think, Dr. Judy, just adding on a little bit extra to what you've said there, you know, every baby, every little child that's born, you know, it comes into the world expecting love. You know, it's almost, you know, here I am, love me, you know, it's open to love, to receive it, and it doesn't sort of question that. But at some point there's a disconnect, and it begins to shut down somehow. But the truth about each one of us is, you know, as human beings, we need relationship. We need to be in relationship with others. We are relational creatures, so you know it's part of our well-being. It's what you're here for. And if we've learned that love doesn't exist, sometimes we can also hold on to that. Because it's a protective thing as well. You know, it can sort of protect us from experiencing.
Protective. And in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which I all want you to get a free copy of, I make a statement there, I don't remember which page, talk about parents setting the bar. So if the parent sets the bar of no love, that's what your world is. Low bar, no love, low love. No to low love, okay? And so we're here to break through that bar and set the bar higher as you could take in more and understand that what you've been looking at is a little microcosm of a world that your parents created. And who wants to live in that double dungeon of darkness of their creation? Certainly, I don't think any of you do.
And sometimes a good place to begin, and you'll know this with all your pets, you know, is to have to experience the love of an animal. I know that sounds silly, but sometimes it can be a good place to start, being able to give and receive love safely, you know.
Not silly, because love is so unconditional with animals.
Yes.
And it's safe. I mean, you're not going to necessarily get hurt by loving a dog unless it's one of my dogs, because I love them so much. Chew off my arm. Just kidding, of course. But it goes so deep, and if you allow a creature in there, it could be a dog or a cat or anything, then you could start to really connect back with your heart, and that's a wonderful place to start. So do bring that up, obviously, in the seminar, because some people have never experienced any form of love.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I saw a funny meme the other day about that. It was a picture of somebody's hand, and their cat was sort of chewing on their hand, and they had all these scratches from the cat. Sure. And the title was "The Only Toxic Relationship Worth Staying In."
Well, I can attest to that.
The cat was lashing the hand.
I put my hand in her mouth, and she just kind of grabs my hand and nods off to sleep. And, you know, it's a very toxic relationship. They're very worthwhile. Yeah. So thank you. Any other questions in the chat room?
That's really all the questions, mostly just conversation tonight, and they're enjoying the show. Okay.
I really appreciate it. And please remember, the webinar's coming up September 3rd. We're just a few weeks out, and the fee is $19.95. Early registration, $1,500 now. And if you register now, you get one session with Christiana, and you will learn on your journey how to identify and dismantle your old blueprint that led to your abuse, how to stop the repetitive patterns from ruining the rest of your life, how to set boundaries to foolproof yourself against narcissists, and how to be the cause of a better outcome, of better outcomes for your life. Sorry for that little error there, spelling error, I just caught it. Individual sessions will be available to supplement your journey, and there's the number you can call and register. If I don't have your email, of course, you can contact me, and I'll send you the email. I'll send you the invitation to the mind map journey and how to enroll. So Christiana, thank you so very much for being a part of the show, and a big thank you for being the therapist who is going to lead this webinar. I'm really, really excited about it. And
me too.
I just have one other announcement. I know I've been talking about this forever. I have just, I tried to create a video titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, and I did one version of that, was not happy. I'm picky. I really, really wanted to do a great job, and I'm very, very proud to say that I spent all of last week with an excellent director and a producer, and created a beautiful mind map journey to healing from narcissistic abuse. I'll tell you more about it. It's being edited right now, and I'll show everyone little portions of it so that you could see it. It's really profound and colorful, and we've got 2 case studies in there and lots of surprises in there for you, and tons of information. And that will be available in the next few weeks. So you can contact me about that. And if there are no other questions or comments, anything else in that chat room that really needs to be addressed, Tony?
I think that's about it. But that's
okay,
great.
Well, I thank everyone for joining in. And Christiana, once again, thank you for being a wonderful addition to the Psychological Healing Center, and for knowing the mind map, particularly the wound of apathy and the wounds created by narcissistic family systems.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Judy. And I'm really excited about the webinar too. You know, there's something special when people come together as a group.
Yeah, you'll get your link. You could just link in.
Yeah.
Before you start the webinar, you'll have your video, you'll have your journal, which you'll print out, and then you can attend, learn, ask questions, and be a participant in the process. All right, so thanks everyone. Good night. See you next week.
Good night, everyone.